Rome. On the night between March 23rd and 24th, 1984, the biggest robbery ever carried out in Italy took place, the assault on Brinks and Cormac. The vault, which belonged to a banking chain owned by Michel Sindona, was targeted during the night by 4 men who, without firing a shot, took away cash, gold and valuables worth 35 billion lire. Tony Chichiarelli, mastermind of the so-called Heist of the Century, was a forger linked to the Magliana gang, the Moro case, the Pecorelli case, and other major Italian crimes from the 1970s and 1980s. A very peculiar case. Today we're talking about it with Federico Bettuzzi, journalist and writer, author of the blog Stories of History.
Hi Giovanni, thanks for reaching out. Yes, you're right, it's a rather peculiar story. The story of a robbery. It was called the Robbery of the Century. Mainly because at the time when the details of the amount stolen during this particular robbery were revealed, the newspapers immediately said, wow, so much money had never disappeared all at once before. But it's a very, very strange robbery. Usually when we talk about a robbery, we think of a bank. At worst, we might even talk about a robbery at an insurance company. Few have attempted to rob a valuables depot, and even fewer have succeeded. This one is a particularly unique depot. Let's take a look at the time and place coordinates for a moment. We're in Rome along the Via Aurelia. It's Sunday, March 24th, 1980. The 1980s. Terrorism is coming to an end. 2 years earlier, Italy won the World Cup, and there's a sense of euphoria. Well, what happens? On this morning, many, many years ago, almost 37 years ago now, a man shows up at a Valerie depot along the Aurelia Road in Rome. He works as a security guard, but that day is his day off. Behind him, there are 3 hooded people. They are 3 robbers. Franco Parsi buzzes his 2 colleagues inside the building. It's Sunday, so the third is off. Valuables storage isn't working. He gets them to open the door, saying, "Sorry, it's me. I finished my shift yesterday and forgot something." They open the door for him, and as soon as the door is open, there's a raid. The 3 criminals with their faces covered restrain the other 2 night watchmen. They chain them up, gag them, and lay out a red banner, which is the banner of the Red Brigades. They are already dying, destroyed by state initiative, both by the judiciary and by law enforcement. I was saying they lay out this red cloth, take the usual photos, and take away a lot of money. It was estimated between 35 and 37 billion lire at the time. Just to give you an idea of today's value, that's just under 52 million euros. But they don't just do that. They leave some rather peculiar things. They leave some Polaroid photos. They leave some handwritten index cards. And most importantly, they leave something else. 7 rounds, 7.6, 2 caliber bullets, 7 chains, 7 keys. And a smoke grenade, obviously not armed, of the Energa brand. That's interesting, because first of all, this grenade had been used, the same one, a few years earlier, to kill. This time, it was truly the Red Brigades. Colonel Antonio Valesco of the Carabinieri was killed in central Rome. So maybe it's a signal to say, yes, we really are the Red Brigades, but that's not the case. 7 bullets, 7 chains, 7 bunches of keys. It's a number we'll see again. Anyway, the commando quickly takes the money. And they escape in a van they had already prepared, which they had even painted with the colors of the depot, Valori, a depot that has a name. It's called Brinks Secure Mark. It's a well-established company that receives cash from restaurants, hotels, and especially from large boats. And of course, it's there. It's a company that at the time had a rather well-known name inside it. It's the name of a banker, a bankrupt, a lawyer. His name is Michel Sindona. Well, we've already taken another step, so a robbery. They mention the Red Brigades, but it's not them. It's about a bankrupt man, Michel Sindona. But who actually did it? You only find out much later, after even Telegiornale, One Italy's main news program, covers it, or a special about this pointless robbery. What's that got to do with it? A rather strange character who is part of that criminal galaxy known as the Banda della Maglia. So he's another member of our crew. Red Brigades. The bankrupt Sindona from the Banda della Maglia. And what else is there? Is there still something missing from our picture? Well, yes, because we're still missing the main character, the one who actually planned this heist, and especially his motivations. This character is actually named Tony Chichiarelli, but for everyone else, who is Tony? He's a gallery owner, he's also a painter, and he's very well known in the art world because he's an excellent imitator of Giorgio de Chirico's works. At that time, he was at his peak for that reason. The commercial aspect, de Chirico's original works were in high demand, but even the fakes made by Tony Chichiarelli are liked and get sold. Clearly, they are forgeries of the artist, so they are signed. But Tony Chichiarelli is not just a painter and gallery owner, he also has an office supply store. He also has some odd friends. Let's say the Banda della Magliana. Tony Chichiarelli's best friend at that time is named Danilo Abrucciati. Some people might remember him. He was known as the Chameleon. Or, for those who watched the Sky series from a few years ago, his nickname would basically be Pochino. The writer and magistrate De Caccia. Abrucciati. He started out as a robber, as a boxer, then a robber again. Then he became an associate of the Marseillais. And then he became a boss of the... As the Magliana boss, he brings people into his circle. Tony Chichiarelli. And Chichiarelli finds not only the criminal world we know from Magliana, but also other, more unusual characters. Who gets to know Francesco Pazienza. For those who don't know, he was a spy. Besides being the creator of the so-called sesame paralysis, he also gets to know the armed revolutionary nuclei, armed revolutionary nuclei. Underworld, a lot. Chichiarelli meets a journalist, a very, very strange journalist, whose name is Mino Pecorelli. He is a former partisan fighter. He fought with the Polish forces in Italy, then he went through various hardships. He began as a lawyer, then switched to writing and became a journalist. He opens a news agency called Political Observatory, and publishes some rather hot scoops. They are read only by subscribers, but really that's enough to stir up the inner circle. Later on, our dear Mino Pecorelli will found a magazine that will also be called Political Observatory, and in the end, he will be killed. Only a year after Aldo Moro's kidnapping. Made present. Mino Pecorelli was killed by a hitman whose identity is still unknown today. We already have a very, very broad picture. Who is Tony Chichiarelli? We've already said. Chichiarelli has many contacts. Chichiarelli also wrote the fake statement number 7 about Lake Duchessa during the Moro kidnapping. For context, Aldo Moro was kidnapped in Rome on March 16, 1978. About a month later, on April 18, a statement was circulated. He said it. If they communicated this through the mimeograph. On the 7th, the execution of President Moro by suicide is announced. This is the thing. And the family members are informed. And the body was thrown into the lake of the Duchess, a lake located in the Apennines outside Rieti, which was frozen at the time. The statement is a fake. It will be denied by the Red Brigades themselves, the real municipality. And this fake statement number 7 was written among the Chichiarellis. As for who wrote it, it's a mystery. Many say it was written at the urging of the secret services, partly to test the waters to understand the real intentions of the Red Brigades. We'll never know. The fact is, do you remember that number 7, the 7 bullets? 7.62, by the way, which is the caliber used to kill Morrow on May 9th, 1978. 7 bullets, 7 chains, 7 padlocks. So there's something maybe Chichiarelli likes to play. He likes to leave some clues, something special. As we were saying, Morrow was killed on May 9th, 1978. Later on, in March 1979, Mino Pecorelli was killed. What a coincidence. Just a few days after the murder of Mino Pecorelli, Tony Chichiarelli has a bag found in a taxi in Rome. A bag containing the typewriter head with which he had written the fake statement number 7. Yeah, that's something. Then there are typewritten cards concerning the same Pecorelli, concerning politicians, concerning police officials, like giving a warning. And then other clues, including even the tissues, the same brand of tissues, to dab the blood that was coming out of the wounds and imperti. So how can I say I know? I know what really happened to Morrow. I know what Pecorelli knew. So don't even try. It's almost like giving a warning. I know, but don't try anything because I can blackmail you, or I could even spill the blood. He's always a strange character. Pecorelli then watches his Magliana friends fall apart after Franco Giuseppucci, the group's boss and founder, was killed by gunfire in 1980. 2 years later, Danilo Abruciati sets up an ambush for the vice president of Banco Ambrosiano, Roberto Rossone, in Milan. It's an ambush. Rossone remains a target. He is killed by a night watchman who intervenes to defend Rossone. So the Magliana gang starts to fall apart. And what does Chichiarelli do? He's basically a loose cannon. He works for himself. If before, for the Magliana gang, he used to make fake documents or do other favors, maybe even in the field of money laundering, well, he decides to test himself a bit however he wants. Chichiarelli also obviously has a private life because he's married, but at a certain point he meets a 21-year-old girl, Cristina Cirilli, and decides to live with her, and he will also have a child with her. And it's exactly Cristina who tells about a specific robbery he organized, recruiting 3 people for Chichiarelli. Men to join him on the raid, 2 with him, 1 staying to guard the page. He speaks with 2 insiders, a security guard from the facility, and another who was recently fired. They give him the map and some of the shift schedules. After that, he kidnaps Sabato Parsi at the exit from the depot, from his house, who was already nicely packed up. And he tells him, look, if you want to survive, if your family wants to survive, you have to help us. You have to do what we say. Don't worry, if everything goes well, in 24 hours, you'll be free. So, look, it was this robbery, which, as we said, according to the press, yields between 35 and 37 billion. According to Chichiarelli, actually the money is much more. They even need 50 billion. Making the usual comparison, we're talking about well over 70 million euros. So that's really a lot of money. What else can I say? The robbery is going fine. Chichiarelli's partners get quite a bit of money. The insiders, his accomplices, no problem. But Chichiarelli, unexpectedly pugil, actually, if he has all this money and a life to rebuild, it's strange that he doesn't run away. He stays in Rome, and he won't meet a good end. He absolutely won't meet a good end. The end of Chichiarelli is a bit peculiar as well, because it seems like no one is looking for him. The investigators have no evidence in his case. In September of '84, Chichiarelli comes home one evening. He's driving his Mercedes car. With him are his partner Christina Cirilli and their baby, who was born just a month ago. He arrives at home, his partner gets out and opens the front door. And in the entrance hall, there's a killer who remains unknown to this day. And this killer, at first glance, he shoots Cirilli 4 times. One hits her in the eye, and Cirilli will survive, even though she will lose. And then he grazes her arms. And then killer runs away on foot, passes by Cirilli, who is on the ground in a pool of blood, and leaves. Chichiarelli, furious, leaves the car and chases after him. But he has already calculated everything. As soon as he turns the corner, he turns around, waits for Chichiarelli to arrive, and empties the whole magazine on him. At that moment, Tony Chichiarelli dies. When the police arrive, they take Cirilli to the hospital. After a few days, when she has recovered, they question her and try to understand the motive. They just can't figure out this blessed motive. Cirilli. Tony Chichiarelli was the mastermind and leader of the heist of the century, the Princess and Kurman. Thank you. The investigators found a lot of things. They found weapons. They found some drugs, even though he used them. And upstairs, an act of absurd hedonism, which is the recording on videotape of that special about the fast, right about the robbery of the century. Actually, Chichiarelli liked to watch his own act again, which was a bit strange. His share of the money was never found. According to Cirilli, it would have been about 30 billion lire gone. The names of the accomplices were never known. They also disappeared into thin air with part of the money. The 2 insiders were, to them anyway, in the loot percentage-wise, they got very little, just crumbs, but almost. So, almost nothing was recovered. Okay, many have tried to make a connection. The fact is, even though they knew very well who Briggs and Seckermark belonged to, remember that Sindona, that Chichiarelli went to rob her? So what some have tried to connect is, but actually? The robbery, which was a very easy robbery, 0 shots fired, no one injured, something never seen before. Was it, or was it the payment for a service, or was it simply a way to give a little consolation? No, the fact is someone broke their word. Still the times of the Lake of the Duchess and then also of the Picarelli murder. Or was it still a way to keep Chichiarelli quiet and tell him not to investigate?
Unfortunately, not this. Sindona still connects this part to the P2 lodge as well, if I'm not mistaken.
He also connects it to the P2 since Sindo. Ney ends up at the P2. In the mid-70s, he was brought to the P2 by an acquaintance of his, who was a member at the time. Of a regular Masonic obedience, that down there is a Loggia Italia, he is instead brought to the P2, and the P2, and there is also Roberto, Francesco, parallel intelligence agencies in which there are people gravitating around this affair. There's also Mino Pecorelli, who is killed, as we were saying. The P2 contains everything and its opposite. And here, Curvo, I don't want to use a harsh word, but let's say it's a tangle that's a bit hard to unravel. Because when the list came out in March 1988, in just a few days, it will be 40 years. They even found that in the P2 list, there were enemies mixed together. There was General Buccelli and his rival Maletti. There was Larini and there was Didona. There was everything and its opposite. Chichiarelli isn't there. He wasn't in the P2, but he knew a lot of P2 members. And who knows if there was an interest there as well.
There's no doubt about that. So it's a robbery that basically has a lot of doubts, but more or less connects a large part of Italy's history. The ugliest and the darkest one, let's say, or red, it depends on what color you want to give it. Investigations were carried out to find out who ordered and who carried out the murder. Because from this story, and especially from those years, you can only see that the events happened, but very little has actually been discovered. The masterminds behind Sindona's murder have never been discovered, at least not officially, nor have those behind Calvais. Let's not even talk about Moro. The Magliana gang remains murky, and it connects to many other crime stories, major historical events, including even the Orlandi kidnapping. The murder of Chichiarelli remains unsolved to this day. And then there's the P2 list, which included many, let's say, very important figures. There could be some connection in the fact that none of these incidents have actually found a culprit. Instigators. And yet another higher level.
I'll tell you, some trials were held, and they also dealt with the figure of Chichiarelli in these trials. We're talking about the trials regarding the Moro case and also the Pecor case. What emerged were some statements, sometimes contradictory, even from the informants. In fact, it led to verdicts of not guilty. As for the Pecorelli murder, precisely because, according to the judges, there was no absolute clarity from the informants. Here and there, they made statements that were hard to verify or even contradicted each other. It's clear that in this case, everything is very unclear. Even in the Chichiarelli murder, to this day, we still don't know who did it. First, because no one, not even a single person, has claimed a responsibility. A lifer, one of the irreducibles, could also take responsibility for other crimes after being sentenced to life in prison. After all, that's what they have to serve. None of them, none of the informants from the Magliana, have spoken about it openly. They admitted to knowing Chichiarelli, to having used his skills as a forger anyway. But beyond that, nothing. Everyone says, but he was a friend of Abruciati. He hasn't spoken in nearly 40 years? Either way, they agree, but he was a friend who knew someone now gone. So it's very difficult to figure out. Chichiarelli died without being able to name his accomplices, without being able to say why he left the famous clues. What did that grenade in Erja used in the ambush on Colonel Varisco have to do with it, for example? No one ever understood. And the mystery about this robbery of the century grows. Between the money that disappeared, the accomplices who can't be found, and the motives, which sometimes are a bit unclear. It's one of Italy's great mysteries. These are mysteries that, as you said, are linked to other events in a period that remains very unclear. Not even in the great archive of the super cop Federico Umberto D'Amato. If any of you have seen, as I said before, Romanzo Criminale, he would be the old man from that series. Not even in his archive. He had led the Reserved Affairs Office at the Ministry of the Interior. Was there ever any trace of something that could help solve all these mysteries? And what if he hadn't classified anything? D'Amato, I repeat, was a super cop. Minnie? Excellent. You really don't know where to start.
As time passes, you'll know less.
Clear?
And that, no doubt, perfect. I thank you very much for accepting the invitation to come on the channel to talk to us about this particular strange story, but one that, I repeat, takes up a large part of Italy's dark history between the 70s and 80s. I invite you again to talk about any topic, any mystery, to stay in touch with the channel in the future. That would really make me very happy.
Thank you, Giovanni. Thank you, and greetings to everyone who passionately follows your channel. Thank you very much.